Your translator is lying. Evan's voice cracked across the private dining room, and 10 Mafia Alphas turned like wolves scenting blood. Damien Cross paused with the contract pen 1 inch from the page. Across the table, the Russian envoy smiled, but Evan had heard the truth. The second glass was poisoned, the delivery address was fake, and the deal ended with Damien dead before sunrise. Victor, the translator, whispered, "He's a spy." A gun lifted. Evan stopped breathing. Damien looked at the wine, then at Evan. "Translate every word," he ordered. Evan did. The lights went out. A shot shattered the glass. Then Damien's arm locked around Evan's waist, pulling him into the dark. "Now," Damien growled against his ear, "you're mine to protect. Your translator is lying." The words left Evan Miller's mouth before fear could drag them back, and the private dining room went so still he could hear the soft hiss of the air conditioner above the black marble ceiling. 10 men in tailored suits turned toward him. Crystal glasses stopped halfway to lips. A fountain pen hovered 1 inch above a contract worth more money than Evan would earn in 10 lifetimes. At the head of the table, Damien Cross looked up at last. He did not move quickly. He did not have to. Damien was the kind of alpha who made silence feel heavier than shouting, a man with black hair combed back from a face too calm to be kind, gray eyes cold as a February highway, and a presence that made every other powerful man in the room seem like a guest in his shadow. Evan stood near the service cart, one hand wrapped around a folded white towel, the other still trembling beside the silver wine bucket. He was supposed to be invisible tonight. That was the rule at the Black Marrow, the most expensive private restaurant under downtown Chicago, hidden behind an unmarked steel door 3 blocks from the river. Waiters did not listen. Waiters did not react. Waiters did not remember faces, names, accents, or the contents of conversations that could ruin families before morning. Evan knew those rules better than anyone, because he needed this job. His younger brother's hospital bills did not care if Evan was tired, scared, or one bad decision away from disappearing into a world he had spent his whole life avoiding. So when the reservation came in under a fake company name, when the manager told him the private room would need full discretion, when the security team swept the hallway twice and took every employee's phone, Evan had lowered his eyes and promised himself he would survive the shift by becoming furniture. Then Damien Cross walked in, and the room changed temperature. His scent moved before him, clean and sharp, like snow on dark steel, restrained but impossible to ignore. Evan had served alphas before, wealthy ones, cruel ones, lonely ones who wore power like a watch and expected everyone to notice. Damien was different. He wore power like skin. He said almost nothing as he took the center seat, but the men around him adjusted to his gravity, leaning forward, lowering their voices, measuring every breath. Across from him sat the foreign partners, 3 men with polite smiles and empty eyes, speaking in Russian beneath the smooth English voice of Victor Hale, the translator. Evan almost missed the first lie. Victor said they were confirming the delivery in Gary, Indiana, but the man in the navy suit had clearly said the location was being moved across Lake Michigan. The second lie made Evan's fingers tighten around the wine bottle. Victor translated that the second toast was a sign of trust. The real words were colder. After the second glass, he will not leave the room standing. Evan felt the floor tilt beneath his polished black shoes. He looked at Damien's untouched wine, at Victor's pleasant smile, at the contract waiting for a signature, and understood the awful shape of the trap. One wrong breath, one wrong glance, and Evan would be exposed. But if he stayed silent, Damien Cross would sign away his life while everyone watched. Evan's throat burned. His instincts screamed at him to lower his head, to be small, to live. Instead, he stepped forward into the dangerous quiet and said the one sentence that made every predator in the room look directly at him. Your translator is lying. Evan knew the room had changed because even the ice stopped moving in the glasses. 1 second, he had been a waiter in a black vest and polished shoes, trying to disappear behind the service cart. The next, he was the only thing every dangerous man in that private room could see. Victor Hale's pleasant smile did not vanish. That was what made it worse. It simply tightened at the corners, becoming cleaner, sharper, like a mask being pulled into place. "Excuse me," Victor said, his voice smooth enough to pass for confusion if no one listened closely. "I believe the waiter misunderstood something." Evan's pulse hammered so hard he felt it behind his eyes. The men across the table shifted in their seats, their expressions carefully blank, but their hands moved away from their glasses. Damien Cross did not look at them. He looked only at Evan. Those gray eyes did not soften, did not warm, did not promise safety. They measured him, weighed him, stripped the room away until Evan felt as if he were standing alone beneath a spotlight. "What did you hear?" Damien asked. His voice was low, controlled, and terrifyingly calm. Evan swallowed. The smart answer was nothing. The safe answer was an apology. He could say he was tired, that he had confused languages, that the pressure of serving such important guests had rattled him. He could bow his head, accept being fired, and maybe leave the Black Marrow through the back door with his life still attached to his name. But then his eyes flicked to Damien's wineglass again. Ruby dark liquid waited beneath the chandelier glow, untouched, patient, beautiful in the way dangerous things often were. Evan thought of his brother Noah asleep in a hospital room 8 miles away, pale against white sheets, trusting Evan to keep showing up, keep paying, keep surviving. He thought of his mother teaching him languages at their kitchen table when he was little, tapping a pencil against flashcards and telling him that words could open doors, but they could also hide knives. "They did not say the second toast was for trust," Evan said, forcing each word out slowly. "They said after the second glass, you would not leave this room standing." A breath moved through the table, silent but unmistakable. Victor gave a short laugh. "That is absurd. He is inventing this." "No," Evan said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his own voice. "You changed the delivery site too. You said Gary, Indiana. They said the shipment was being rerouted across Lake Michigan, to a private dock north of Milwaukee. You removed the part about cross-security being delayed by 40 minutes. You also skipped the phrase about the old debt being collected tonight." Damien's gaze finally left Evan and settled on Victor. The translator's face remained composed, but the skin at his throat moved once. "This is a performance," Victor said. "A desperate Omega trying to make himself valuable in a room where he does not belong." The word Omega landed like a match near gasoline. Evan felt several stares sharpen. He had kept his scent muted beneath blockers all night, but fear had a way of finding cracks in every disguise. Damien noticed. His eyes narrowed, not with disgust, not with surprise, but with something colder and more focused. "How does my waiter know Russian?" he asked. Evan should have lied. Instead, the truth slipped out because too many lies had already been spoken in that room. "My mother was a diplomatic interpreter. Russian, Italian, Polish, French, and German. She taught me before she got sick." For the first time, something unreadable crossed Damien's face. Not kindness. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. Across the table, one of the foreign men murmured something under his breath, too quiet for Victor to catch, but not too quiet for Evan. Evan's stomach dropped. "He just told the man beside him to clear the exits," Evan whispered. Damien did not move, but the room obeyed him anyway. His security team shifted almost invisibly near the walls. The heavy door behind Evan clicked shut. Victor's smile finally disappeared. Damien placed the pen flat beside the contract and leaned back in his chair, calm as winter. "Mr. Hale," he said softly, "I think our waiter has translated enough to make this evening interesting." Victor looked at Evan then, and for one frozen second, all the polish fell away. What remained was not embarrassment or anger. It was warning. Evan understood immediately that by speaking, he had not escaped danger. He had stepped directly into the center of it. Damien Cross did not raise his voice, and somehow that made the room feel smaller. "Nobody leaves," he said. The two words settled over the private dining room like a lock turning inside a vault. Evan felt the air change again, not louder, not faster, just tighter. The men posted near the walls adjusted their stance, and the polished door behind him remained closed. The guests across the table tried to look offended, but their eyes had begun moving too much, flicking toward exits, toward glasses, toward Victor Hale, who now stood with one hand resting against the back of his chair as if he were still completely in control. Evan knew better. A real liar panicked when exposed. A professional liar became polite. Victor was smiling again. "Mr. Cross," he said, each syllable smooth and careful, "surely you are not allowing an exhausted server to derail months of negotiation. This boy is frightened." He heard foreign words, imagined danger, and tried to make himself important. Evan's cheeks burned, but he kept his eyes lowered because looking directly at Victor made his stomach twist. The man's voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic, and that was the most dangerous part of it. He was trying to make Evan sound small. Unstable. Disposable. Damien turned the wineglass slowly by its stem, watching the red surface catch the chandelier light. "Then drink it," he said. The room froze. Victor blinked once. "Pardon?" Damien pushed the untouched glass across the black marble table with 2 fingers. It slid smoothly, stopping inches from Victor's hand. "If the waiter is lying, drink it." No one spoke. The soft jazz playing through the hidden speakers suddenly seemed too cheerful, too far away from the cold pressure gathering around the table. Victor looked at the glass, then at Damien, then at the foreign partners, whose faces had gone still in a way Evan did not like. Evan understood then that Damien had not believed him completely, not yet. He was testing every person in the room at once. Damien Cross did not ask for trust. He built traps and waited to see who stepped wrong. Victor let out a quiet laugh. "This is theatrical." "I agree," Damien said. "Drink." A thin line of sweat appeared near Victor's temple. Evan saw it because he was watching too closely, because fear had sharpened every detail until the whole room felt carved from glass. The translator's hand moved toward the wine, stopped, then withdrew. It was not a confession, not in words, but the silence around it was enough. Damien's expression did not change, yet something in the room bowed beneath him. Evan felt it in his bones, the terrible calm of an alpha who had just found the shape of betrayal. "Evan Miller," Damien said. Evan's head snapped up before he could stop himself. Hearing his name in that voice made his pulse stumble. "How do you know my name?" "I know the names of everyone allowed within 20 feet of me." Damien's gaze did not leave him. "You said they mentioned an old debt. Translate that phrase exactly." Evan wet his lips, struggling to remember the words in order. "They said the debt from St. Bartholomew is being collected tonight." For the first time, Damien went completely still. Not the relaxed stillness he had worn before, but something deeper, sharper, like a door inside him had closed. One of his men near the wall looked at him quickly, then looked away. Evan realized he had said something he was not supposed to understand. Something personal. Something buried. Across the table, the man in the navy suit spoke in Russian again, faster this time, under his breath. Evan heard enough to feel cold spread through his chest. "He says the waiter knows too much," Evan whispered. "He says I should not walk out with a voice." Damien stood. He did it slowly, but every chair around the table seemed to shrink away from him. His shadow stretched across the contract, across the poisoned glass, across Evan's shaking hands. "Then the negotiation is over," Damien said. Victor's mask cracked just enough for Evan to see fury beneath it. "You have no idea what you are interrupting." Damien's eyes remained on Evan. "No," he said softly. "But he does." That was the moment Evan realized his mistake was larger than saving one man from one bad deal. He had become proof. He had heard. The hidden language behind the smiles, the threat beneath the toast, the secret name that made Damien Cross look almost human for half a second. And in the world beneath Chicago, Proof did not get thanked. Proof got hunted. The lights above them flickered once, then twice. Evan looked up. Damien moved before anyone else did, stepping between Evan and the table with the effortless certainty of someone claiming territory. The room went dark, and in that sudden blackness, Damien's voice came low and close, not gentle, but absolute. "Stay behind me." The darkness lasted only 3 seconds, but Evan felt every heartbeat inside it. The room vanished, the chandelier disappeared, and the powerful men around the table became nothing but breathing shapes in the black. Evan's instincts screamed for him to run, but Damien Cross stood in front of him like a locked door made of winter and steel. One hand reached back without looking and caught Evan by the wrist, not hard enough to hurt, only firm enough to anchor him. "Do not move," Damien said, and for once Evan obeyed without thinking. The lights returned in a low red emergency glow, washing the private room in the color of warning signs and old secrets. The table had erupted into chaos without ever becoming loud. Chairs had shifted, guards had moved, and the foreign partners were no longer pretending to be businessmen. Victor Hale was gone from his chair. The poison glass had tipped sideways, staining the contract in a spreading red bloom that looked too much like spilled truth. Evan's breath caught. "Victor," he whispered. He left through the service panel. Damien turned his head slightly. "What service panel?" Evan pointed with a trembling hand toward the far wall, where a narrow seam hid behind a framed photograph of the Chicago skyline. Most guests never noticed it. Most waiters did, because staff used it during private events when wealthy people wanted food to appear as if by magic. "It leads to the wine corridor, then the freight elevator," Evan said. "If he reaches the alley, he can disappear into Lower Wacker Drive." Damien's eyes sharpened. "You know this building well." "I work here 5 nights a week." "Then you are with me." Evan stared at him. "No. I just told you where he went. And now every man who planned this knows you can identify him, understand him, and ruin him." Damien stepped closer, blocking the room from Evan's view. "That means you do not get to stand alone anymore." The words should have sounded like a threat. Somehow they sounded like a verdict. One of Damien's men approached, speaking quietly into an earpiece, but Damien lifted 2 fingers and the man stopped. His attention remained on Evan. "The phrase St. Bartholomew," Damien said. "Are you certain?" Evan nodded, though he wished he could take the answer back. "Yes." A shadow crossed Damien's face, small and quick, but Evan saw it. For the first time, the Alpha Mafia boss looked less like a monster from whispered stories and more like a man who had heard a ghost knock from the other side of a locked room. "That name belonged to a deal that burned 12 years ago," Damien said. "Only 6 people knew it existed. Then maybe one of those 6 people sold you out." The moment Evan said it, he wanted to vanish. No waiter spoke to a man like Damien Cross that way. No Omega with rent overdue and a brother in the hospital accused someone inside a mafia empire and expected to live peacefully afterward. But Damien did not punish the honesty. He studied it. "You are terrified," he said. Evan gave a shaky laugh. "That is because I am not stupid." Something almost like approval flickered in Damien's eyes. "Good. Stupid people make noise. Useful people notice doors." He turned toward the hidden panel. "Show me the corridor." Evan's stomach dropped. "You want me to lead you after him?" "I want you to tell me what he says when he thinks no one in this building can understand him." Before Evan could answer, a voice crackled from a fallen radio near the service cart, speaking in hurried Russian. Evan went cold as the words reached him. Damien saw the change immediately. "Translate." Evan's mouth felt dry. "Victor is not running," he said. "He is going to the hospital district." Damien's stare hardened. "Why?" Evan looked at his confiscated phone locked inside the manager's office, then thought of Noah 8. Miles away, asleep under fluorescent lights, his name listed on forms Evan had signed with trembling hands. The room seemed to tilt again, not from fear for himself this time, but from something far worse. "Because he knows my brother's name," Evan whispered. Damien did not hesitate. The coldness around him became focused, precise, and absolute. "Then we leave now." Evan looked toward the ruined table, the stained contract, the powerful men watching from the edges of the red-lit room, and understood that the night had split his life cleanly in two. Before this room, he had been invisible. After it, the most dangerous man in Chicago had placed himself between Evan Miller and everyone who wanted him silent. Damien moved through the black marrow as if the building had been built around him and had simply forgotten to admit it. Evan followed half a step behind, still in his waiter's vest, still smelling faintly of expensive wine and panic, while two of Damien's men cleared the hallway ahead with quiet, practiced efficiency. The restaurant above them continued pretending to be normal. Somewhere beyond the walls, silverware chimed, a woman laughed too loudly, and jazz floated through the ceiling speakers as if nothing had happened below. Evan hated that most of the world could keep breathing while his head stopped. "My phone is in the manager's office," he said, struggling to keep up as Damien led him through the service corridor. "I need to call the hospital." "My people are already checking," Damien replied. "That is not enough." Damien stopped so suddenly Evan nearly walked into him. In the narrow corridor light, the Alpha turned, his gray eyes cutting through every excuse Evan might have used to sound brave. "No," Damien said. "It is not. But panic will not get your brother safer. Information will." Evan wanted to hate him for being calm. He wanted to snap that Noah was not a chess piece, not a detail in some criminal equation. Noah was 16, allergic to most cheap antibiotics, obsessed with old monster movies, and too proud to admit when he was scared. But the words tangled in Evan's throat because Damien was already moving again, and every second mattered more than anger. They reached the freight elevator at the end of the wine corridor. The metal doors stood half open. A smear of red wine marked the floor, not blood, just wine from the overturned contract, but it made Evan's stomach twist anyway. Damien crouched, touched the stain with one gloved finger, and looked toward the stairwell beside the elevator. He did not take this down. Evan listened. At first, he heard only pipes, distant traffic, the hum of the building's bones. Then, faintly, from below, a voice carried up through the stairwell, speaking Italian in a hurried whisper. Evan lifted a hand before he realized he was doing it. Damien went still. Evan leaned closer to the door, heart pounding. The words were fragmented, bouncing off concrete, but enough survived. "He is saying the car is too exposed," Evan whispered. "He wants a different route. He said the boy at Mercy West is leverage, not the target." Damien's jaw tightened. Leverage for what? Evan listened again, forcing himself past the fear. The voice below continued, sharper now. Evan's blood went cold. "For me," he said. "They want me alive." Damien's eyes met his, and something unspoken passed between them. Not comfort. Not softness. Understanding. In 1 hour, Evan had become more valuable to Damien's enemies than the poison glass, the ruined contract, or Victor Hale himself. "Why?" Damien asked. Evan shook his head. "I do not know." "Think." "I am thinking." "Think like your mother taught you." The word struck harder than Evan expected. For a moment, the corridor blurred, and he was 8 years old again at a chipped kitchen table, his mother tapping a pencil beside a notebook, telling him translation was not just language. It was motive. Who benefits from this sentence? Who is the lie protecting? Who is the truth meant to scare? Evan closed his eyes. Victor had not been translating for the foreign partners. Not really. He had been performing for Damien. Feeding him a false deal, hiding an ambush, guiding him toward a toast. But when Evan exposed him, Victor changed priorities. He did not just run. He asked about Noah. That meant someone had prepared information on Evan before tonight. They knew I worked here, Evan said slowly. They knew I could understand them. Damien's expression sharpened. You were placed in that room. The realization hit Evan like the floor dropping away beneath him. The manager had switched his shift at the last minute. The regular VIP server had called in sick. Evan had been told he was lucky, that private room tips could cover a week of groceries. Lucky. The word tasted bitter now. This was not an accident, Evan whispered. They wanted me to hear the lies. Damien looked toward the stairwell, then back at Evan. And they wanted to see what you would do. Below them, the Italian voice faded, followed by the soft echo of a door closing. Victor was gone, but the trap he left behind had only opened wider. Damien reached into his coat, removed a phone, and handed it to Evan. Call your brother's room. Use my name if anyone blocks you. Evan stared at the phone in his palm, black and sleek and impossibly expensive. Why are you helping me? Damien's answer came without hesitation. Because someone used you to reach me. His voice lowered, colder than the corridor air. And no one moves my pieces without paying for it. Evan should have hated being called a piece. Instead, he heard the promise beneath it, dangerous and absolute. He dialed Mercy West with shaking fingers, praying Noah would answer before the next truth found them first. The call connected on the fourth ring, and Evan stopped breathing until a tired nurse answered from Mercy West. Pediatric step-down unit, this is Carla. Evan closed his eyes so hard the corridor light became red behind his lids. This is Evan Miller. I am calling about Noah Miller in room 412. Is he okay? There was a pause filled with typing, distant monitors, and the soft shuffle of hospital life. Evan could picture it too clearly, the pale green walls, the vending machine near the elevators, Noah pretending not to be afraid whenever Evan walked in with convenience store soup and a smile that cost more energy than sleep. Noah is stable, the nurse said. Evan's knees nearly gave out. Damien's hand came to his elbow, steadying him without a word. He is asleep right now. Is there a problem? Evan looked at Damien, unsure how much truth a normal person could survive over the phone. Damien took the phone gently from his hand. This is Damien Cross, he said, his voice calm enough to freeze the corridor. In the next 5 minutes, 2 men from my private security team will arrive at your front desk with identification. They are there to protect Evan Miller's brother from a credible threat. You will not move the patient without confirming directly with Evan on this number. You will not release visitor information. You will not accept transfers, discharge papers, or family authorization unless Evan is physically present. The nurse went silent. Then her voice returned, smaller but professional. Sir, hospital policy requires, hospital policy is why I am calling before my lawyers do, Damien said. Keep the boy safe. You will be thanked properly. He ended the call and handed the phone back. Evan stared at him. You cannot just call a hospital and take over. I did not take over. I clarified the consequences of carelessness. That is the same thing in a nicer suit. For half a second, the corner of Damien's mouth shifted, not quite a smile, but close enough to feel dangerous in a different way. Then the moment vanished. His phone buzzed. He read the message, and the cold returned to his eyes. My men reached the lobby. No suspicious visitors on the floor. Your brother is safe for now. For now. Evan hated those words. They turned safety into a hallway with shadows at both ends. Victor wanted me alive, Evan said, gripping the phone. If they planned for me to hear everything, then why threaten Noah? Why not just grab me after my shift? Damien looked toward the stairwell again, as if the answer might still be echoing there. Because the person behind Victor did not only want information. They wanted you frightened enough to run to the strongest shelter in the room. Evan went cold. You. Damien nodded once. They used your brother to make sure I brought you close. The truth unfolded slowly, each piece uglier than the last. Evan had thought he had interrupted a dangerous deal. Then he thought he had exposed a translator. Then he thought he had become a witness. Now he understood the worst part. He had been bait wrapped in a waiter's uniform, placed carefully in Damien Cross's path. Why would anyone do that, he asked. Damien did not answer immediately. He turned back toward the private room, where the stained contract still waited under emergency lights like a dead thing with signatures missing. Because St. Bartholomew was not just a failed deal, he said. It was the night my father trusted the wrong voice. Evan remembered the phrase from the table, the way it had made Damien go still. A translator? An interpreter, Damien said. Someone who changed one sentence and started a war inside my family. Evan felt the hairs rise along his arms. His mother's old lesson returned again. Who benefits from this sentence? Who is the lie protecting? Who is the truth meant to scare? And now someone found another interpreter, Evan whispered. Me. Damien stepped closer, not crowding him, but narrowing the world until Evan could focus on only one thing, his voice. No. They found your mother's son. Evan's breath caught. What does my mother have to do with this? Before Damien could answer, his phone rang. The screen showed no name, only a blocked number. Damien put it on speaker. Victor Hale's voice filled the corridor, smooth and smiling again. You always were sentimental, Damien. Keep the waiter close. He is the only one left who can read what his mother hid from you. The line went dead. Evan stared at the phone, his whole life suddenly feeling like a language he had never learned to translate. Evan could not move after Victor's voice disappeared. The blocked call had lasted less than 20 seconds, but it left the corridor feeling colder than the walk-in freezer upstairs. Damien stood beside him with the phone still in his hand, expression unreadable, yet Evan could see the change in him now. It was not surprise. It was recognition. You know what he means, Evan said. Damien looked at him, and the red emergency light carved shadows beneath his cheekbones. I know what I was told 12 years ago. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Evan laughed once, brittle and frightened. My mother sold translation services to embassies and law firms. She helped immigrants with paperwork. She made soup when she was worried and kept every birthday card Noah and I ever gave her. She was not part of your world. Damien's gaze did not soften, but his voice lowered. People in my world often hide behind ordinary doors. Evan wanted to argue. He wanted to defend her with the force of every memory he had left, her tired smile, her ink-stained fingers, the way she corrected his pronunciation while folding laundry. But then he remembered the locked metal box under her bed. The one she had told him never to open. The one that vanished after her funeral before Evan could find the key. His silence gave him away. Damien noticed immediately. What? Evan shook his head. Nothing. Evan. His name in Damien's voice was not a command this time. It was a hand on the edge of a cliff. Evan hated that it worked. She had a box, he admitted. Small, gray, with a combination lock. She kept it under her bed. I thought it was documents, maybe immigration papers from old clients. After she died, it was gone. Damien's eyes sharpened. Who had access to the apartment? Hospital staff, hospice nurses, a landlord who hated us, my aunt for one afternoon, and anyone who knew the back window did not lock right. The answer sounded pathetic even to him. His life had been full of broken things that rich men would have replaced without noticing. Damien turned to one of his men. Pull everything on Maribel Miller. Diplomatic contracts, private clients, court records, aliases. Start with the year before St. Bartholomew. Evan froze. Hearing his mother's name in that hallway made something inside him recoil. Do not turn her into one of your files. Damien looked back. Someone already did. Before Evan could answer, the freight elevator chimed. All three men turned. The doors slid open to reveal no one inside, only a service tray placed neatly in the center of the elevator floor. On it sat Evan's confiscated phone, his employee badge, and a folded white napkin. Evan knew before anyone touched it that the napkin was meant for him. Damien stepped forward first, but Evan caught his sleeve. Wait. The word slipped out before he could measure it. Damien stopped. Evan stared at the tray, at the careful arrangement, at the way the phone had been placed face up but turned off. Not random. Not rushed. A message, composed like a sentence. The badge is upside down, Evan whispered. At the restaurant, that means a staff member is off shift. Damien followed his gaze. And the napkin? Evan's mouth went dry. There was a line written across the white cloth in blue ink, not in English, not Russian, but Polish, in his mother's precise handwriting style. Evan translated it softly. A false voice opens the old door. Damien went very still. That phrase was said the night my father died. Evan stared at him, the corridor tilting beneath his feet. My mother wrote this? No, Damien said. Someone who wants you to believe she did. Evan reached for the napkin despite every instinct screaming not to. Beneath the Polish sentence, there was a number. Not a phone number. An address on the south side, only 3 miles from the apartment where Evan had grown up. Under it were 2 words in English, come alone. Evan's hands began to shake. Damien took the napkin from him, read it once, and folded it with terrifying care. That will not happen. Evan looked up. It says come alone. I can read. Then you know they will hurt Noah if I do not. Damien stepped close enough that Evan could feel the steady wall of him, calm against Evan's rising panic. Your brother is guarded. Your apartment will be watched. The hospital is locked down. You are not walking into a trap because a ghost borrowed your mother's handwriting. You do not understand, Evan whispered. If there is even a chance this is about her, I have to know. For the first time, Damien's composure cracked just enough for Evan to see the grief beneath the ice. That is exactly what they want from you. Evan held his gaze, terrified, angry, and suddenly certain of one thing. Damien Cross was not protecting him only because he was useful. Damien was looking at Evan like he had once failed to protect someone else from the same kind of lie. The freight elevator doors began to close, but Damien stopped them with one hand. We are going to that address, he said. But not alone, and not blind. Evan swallowed. Why would you risk it? Damien's eyes stayed on the napkin. Because 12 years ago, I trusted the wrong translation. Then he looked at Evan, voice low and absolute. Tonight, I am trusting yours. The address led them to a narrow brick building on the south side, wedged between a closed laundromat and a corner store with metal grates pulled over the windows. Rain had started during the drive, soft at first, then steady enough to turn the streetlights into blurred gold halos on the pavement. Evan sat in the back of Damien's black SUV, still wearing his waiter's uniform beneath a borrowed coat that smelled faintly of cedar, cold air, and the Alpha sitting beside him. Damien had not spoken much during the ride. He had made calls, received messages, and moved unseen people around the city with the quiet precision of a man rearranging a chessboard. Mercy West remained secure. Noah was still safe. Evan repeated that to himself until the words became a thin rope holding him together. This building used to be a language school, Damien said, looking through the tinted window. Closed 8 years ago. Evan stared at the dark second-floor windows. My mother brought me here once. Damien turned to him. Evan searched the memory, surprised by how clearly it rose. I was maybe 9. She said she had to pick up old teaching materials. I waited in the hallway with a vending machine that ate my dollar. She came out crying, but when I asked what was wrong, she said dust made her eyes water. Damien's gaze sharpened. Did you see anyone? A man in a brown coat. Older. He said something to her in Polish. She told me to look at the floor and count my steps until we reached the car. Evan gave a humorless smile. I thought it was a game. It was an escape pattern. The words settled coldly between them. Evan looked back at the building, and suddenly the rain, the locked door, the old sign scarred by weather, all felt less like a place and more like a sentence he had been walking toward since childhood. Damien's men had already swept the block, but Damien still got out first. He opened Evan's door himself, which made one of the guards glance over before quickly looking away. Stay close, Damien said. Evan stepped onto the wet sidewalk. You say that like I have other options. You always have options. No, I have consequences. Damien paused, and for a moment, the hard line of his expression eased into something almost honest. Then choose the consequence that keeps you breathing. Inside, the building smelled of dust, old paper, and rainwater leaking through tired walls. Their flashlights crossed faded posters advertising English classes, citizenship tutoring, and translation services. Evan's throat tightened when he saw a bulletin board near the stairwell. Most of the notices were yellowed beyond reading, but one business card remained pinned beneath cracked plastic. Maribel Miller, certified interpreter. His mother's name looked impossibly small in the flashlight beam. Evan reached for it, but Damien gently caught his wrist. Look first, he said. Evan forced himself to study it. The card was too clean. Not aged like the rest. Placed recently. Beneath it, someone had written a string of numbers in blue ink. Evan recognized the pattern immediately because his mother had used it when teaching him coded memory games. Numbers were not always numbers. Sometimes they were positions in a sentence. It is a book cipher, Evan whispered. We need the source text. Damien's flashlight moved to the wall behind the reception desk. There, taped carefully beneath a framed certificate, was a single page torn from an old bilingual dictionary. Evan's heartbeat quickened. He matched the numbers to the words with shaking focus, one by one, while Damien stood beside him, silent and watchful. The message formed slowly, each word opening another door inside the dark. Saint Bartholomew was not betrayal. The voice was forced. Find the silver ledger before cross does. Evan read it twice before meaning caught up with sound. Then he looked at Damien. It says before cross does. Damien's eyes had gone colder than Evan had ever seen them. That message was not written for you. A soft click echoed from somewhere upstairs. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the unmistakable sound of an old speaker turning on. Victor Hale's voice drifted through the abandoned school, smooth as glass. Very good, Evan. Your mother always said you learned fast. Evan's blood turned to ice. Damien stepped in front of him at once, but the voice continued from every dusty corner. Now ask Damien what happened to the last interpreter who discovered the ledger. Ask him why your mother ran. Ask him why her box disappeared after she died. Evan looked at Damien's back, at the tension locked in his shoulders. Damien, he whispered, what is the silver ledger? Damien did not answer quickly enough, and in that silence, Evan heard the worst translation of all, the man protecting him was still hiding part of the truth. Evan stared at Damien's back while Victor's voice faded through the abandoned language school, leaving only rain ticking against the broken windows. For one painful second, the silence between them felt worse than any lie. Damien turned slowly, and for the first time that night, the cold mask on his face was gone. What remained was not a mafia king, not a man carved from power, but someone who had carried the wrong truth for 12 years. The silver ledger was my father's insurance, Damien said. Names, payments, secret alliances, every person who helped build the trap at St. Bartholomew. After he died, everyone told me the interpreter betrayed him. They told me one changed sentence destroyed everything. Evan's fingers tightened around the old business card with his mother's name on it. My mother. Damien nodded once, and the guilt in that small motion cut deeper than anger. I believed it. I spent years hunting a ghost because it was easier than admitting my own family might have sold him out. The speaker crackled again, Victor's voice softer now. Touching. But the ledger still belongs to the highest bidder. Evan looked at the dictionary page, then at the numbers written beneath his mother's card. Something was wrong. His mother had taught him ciphers, but she had also taught him misdirection. If the obvious message was meant for Damien, then the real one had to be hidden for Evan. He turned the business card over. A tiny line of faded ink sat along the bottom edge, almost invisible unless caught by the flashlight. Evan read it once, and his breath caught. She did not hide it in a box, he whispered. Damien stepped closer. Where? Evan looked toward the bulletin board. She hid it in plain sight. Behind the plastic frame, beneath years of dust and old notices, was a thin silver memory drive taped to the back of the board. Evan peeled it free with shaking hands. At that exact moment, every light in the building snapped on. Damien's men moved in from both stairwells, calm and coordinated, guiding Victor Hale down from the second floor without a scene, his expensive coat damp with rain and his smile finally gone. Damien had not come blind. He had trusted Evan's translation, but he had also protected the exits before stepping inside the trap. Victor looked at the drive in Evan's hand, and for the first time, fear touched his eyes. You have no idea what that will expose, he said. Evan lifted his chin. Then maybe it is time everyone learns the right version. By sunrise, the ledger was copied, secured, and delivered to people even Damien Cross could not silence. Names that had hidden behind money and old power began to fall. Noah stayed safe at Mercy West, confused but unharmed, wrapped in a blanket and joking that Evan had finally made friends with someone who owned a car nicer than their apartment. 3 days later, Evan stood outside the hospital under a pale Chicago morning, no uniform, no service towel, no need to be invisible. Damien waited beside the black SUV, his expression as unreadable as ever, but his voice was different when he spoke. Your mother saved my family from a lie I was too angry to question. Evan looked at him. And you saved mine when you did not have to. Damien's gaze lowered for a moment, almost humble. I did have to. Not because you were useful. Because you were brave when every powerful man in that room expected you to be silent. Evan felt the city moving around them, buses sighing at the curb, coffee steaming from paper cups, the ordinary world returning inch by inch. What happens now? He asked. Damien opened the car door, but he did not touch him, did not command him, did not claim a choice that was not his. Now you decide. I can take you and your brother somewhere safe, or I can walk away and leave guards you will never see. Evan thought of the private room, the poisoned toast, the hidden message, his mother's truth finally breathing in the open. Then he thought of Damien standing between him and the dark, not as a cage, but as a shield. Evan stepped toward the car. No more lies, he said. Damien's eyes softened by the smallest degree. No more lies. And as Chicago woke around them, Evan Miller understood that one honest sentence had not only saved a dangerous Alpha's life. It had opened the door to a future where he no longer had to survive by being unseen.